The next thing that happens, again without the knowledge of the buyer, is that the bank opens a transaction account based on the cash deposit of the buyer. And from the transaction account, using the bank's name on a bank check, the check is issued to the seller in the agreement amount according to the sales figures. The numbers are, of course, all bookkeeping entries, which simply debit the depositor's account by the amount of the bank check. The seller leaves the escrow office with a check in hand, which he then proceeds to deposit into his checking account, whereupon his bank balance increases via bookkeeping entry, while the issuer's bank transaction account is debited via a bookkeeping entry. The next step in this fraudulent transaction occurs when the bank, now in possession of a large mortgage obligation, sells the mortgage obligation to a lender of some kind or other, usually the government-sponsored enterprises, GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The bank then receives full cash payment, and again via a simple bookkeeping entry, and is appointed the servicer of the loan for this entire period of existence. The seller is happy and goes his merry way, but the buyer possesses no knowledge of he actually funded his own transaction through his own promissory note, and is never told that this was the basis of the entire transaction, or that he still has a demand deposit account at the bank from which the check the buyer originated via the transaction account. This gets us the root of the problem, and that is America's dependence on derivatives, which is what your house actually was. A derivative instrument, or a derivative, a contract, the value of which is determined for publicly traded securities, interest rates, currency exchange rates, or market indices. Derivative contracts are often ostensibly used for the purpose of protecting assets against change in value. We are concerned only with the second type of derivative, called derivative securities, bond-like securities created when pools of loans and mortgages are packed and sold to investors. In the hands of knowledgeable users, derivative contracts many applications in the floating interest environment, such as managing currency and interest rate risk, or locating or locking financial costs, and by swapping floating rate debt for fixed rate debt. America must realize that this and other such schemes are nothing but a giant Ponzi scheme built on destroying our country. The sooner America wakes up and realizes this and does something about it, better off we will be. If you don't think all of this is related, just take a look at Story's June 11, 2007 newsletter showing everyone the list of banks and officers involved in the scam. They are the banks threatening foreclosure on our houses. The list of scams the criminals come up with is always overwhelming because they always need a new scam to keep their money being generated, of course off the books and untaxed. Once America sees this is about the greed of money and who holds the most money, U.S. criminals or the EU criminals. U.S. equals fascist, EU equals communist. The more distorted the events in these cases, the more likely they are the truth, and the more likely they involve the want of settlement funds. There have been many scams, such as this, by both the CIA criminals, Bush Clinton families and the Federal Reserve officers, and the EU UN criminals, Angela Merkel, the Vatican and Pope, and Gorbachev himself. The U.S. criminals, since the wanted settlement funds were parked at Citibank, have been able to steal the funds using a CIA gray box device that lets them steal the money without being traced. So far, there are two criminals that stand out as being overly greedy and continuing to scam the entire world of their money, and those two are Dick Cheney and Bush Sr. Bush Sr., of course, funnels most of the CIA drug money into Deutsche Bank. Bush Sr. is also the criminal that tried to use wanted settlement funds for the use of NAFTA Highway, codenamed Centro Zachary, a CIA Spanish operation. If the NAFTA Highway was ever made, Michael Chertoff would get 20% cut in the deal from Bush Sr. As many of us know, NAFTA would spell the end of the United States and give the New World Order a chance to make a North American Union currency. The Gulf Iraq-Afghan War, orchestrated by Bush Sr., is one of the biggest war scams ever, people. Raffinon Bank is well known to be where Bush Sr. keeps his offshore money. And his banking partner was Saddam Hussein, who called Raffinon Bank his bank. Bush Sr., of course, double-crossed him, wanting the monies back, so he had Bush Sr. attack Iraq, secure the bank, change its management, and steal the $17 trillion of off-balance sheet monies. Over 100 Spec Ops soldiers were secured that bank were killed so the planned theft would not be known to the U.S. Not to mention that Tony Blair had 2 Soviet ships in Iraq before the invasion to take the WMDs in Iraq to Qasr. If they are looking for the proof, go to worldreports.org and the May 7, 2008 news release and go to the section titled UN Special Commission UNSCOM, which mentions Sybil Edmonds, Saddam's WMDs. Dick Cheney has been involved in 2 giga scams and one massive theft that brought down Credit Suisse. The first one on March 5, 2007 involved a massive double derivative scam involving Commerce Bank AG, Hong Kong, and Commerce AG, Germany, in which Cheney received 6.3% interest on a 3% interest derivative. The second scam involved investors in China who had $5 billion or more to invest in our $200 trillion unsecured subprime debt in the United States. The bank directly involved in this scam was Bank of England. More pressing than any of these 2 scams are the 9/11 in Halliburton, all cockamamie plots hatched up by Cheney. The massive theft happened September 27, 2007, when Cheney stole George W. Bush's personal account in Dubai, which the sole area is run by Halliburton. This is the reason Credit Suisse collapsed on October 19, 2007 and was taken over by Union Bank of Switzerland. There is no doubt in Story's mind, and in any of all of our minds, that 9/11 was an inside plot by Cheney. Very peculiar things happened on 9/11, but those that implicate Cheney are the whole staff of Morgan Stanley was absent on 9/11. 2. Of Building 7, the officer of Cantor Fitzgerald, a financial service firm and money broker, lost 658 employees that day in a vast portfolio of derivative contracts. Number 3, Building 7 also housed the Enron derivatives, contract records, documents, all of which were lost. Who was the one person involved in the most derivatives trading? Cheney. Then we arrive at Halliburton, one of the most corrupt companies in the world. There is no amount of words to describe such criminal depravity, outright lies, thefts, and negligence allowed to exist within our own government. Here are just a handful of ones you'll be amazed that happened at Halliburton.